Hey guys, hanging out with my friend Jay Kranda. Jay, you're the online pastor at Saddleback. You have been for years now.
Yeah, I've been
You're an OG.
I'm technically an OG. I don't think that that's possible since I'm still in my 30s, but yes, I'm the OG. I've been doing it for almost 13, 14 years.
Yeah, awesome, man. All right, so get us in. You are the online church guru, but online church is not the answer, my friend. Yeah, I just want you to know that. So that's what your workshop's called, right? Is online church is not the answer. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I've been doing online ministry for, almost 13, 15 years in some capacity at my church,
Yeah.
and I love it. I believe in the potential of it, but a lot of times churches will only start a stream. So like I always joke when Mark Zuckerberg turned on live streaming for Facebook, it became this thing every church did, but then they never thought about it ever again. All right. They just turned it on. And so I really believe that the power of digital and technology is beyond just your weekend services. I believe it can be used to actually accomplish your goals as a church. So like thinking about hybrid discipleship, there's
Right.
so many things like using visuals and all these different things in your service. Like you can't just put up a camera in the back room and think people are just going to show up and it's going to solve all your problems.
Good. So I wanted to make sure that I knew what you meant by that. So that what basically, don't just throw up your iPhone in the front of your church and think that you have an online worship experience. You really need to be more intentional about how you present that, chatting with people, an actual interactive experience online, right?
Yeah, so like it's unfortunately, we're all looking to solve problems. And so I think sometimes these if any type of new tech or technology, people kind of call it's gonna save everything. So oh, if you get this app, it's gonna save you. If you use this tool, it's gonna make you 2 times bigger. And I think a lot of times I have a tool I have a tool called the Alpha Omega approach where you think more holistically about your church and what you're trying to do and think about areas that digital or technology isn't being leveraged. So like a lot of churches coming out of COVID, they've really figured out the weekend digital strategy on some level. But as you move deeper into your paradigm of how you make disciples, maybe you haven't thought about how to do it maybe in a group strategy or how do you do it, in a kids ministry. And again, those integrations aren't going to be replacing the physical, but it's gonna be coming alongside and enhancing it in a way. So I really wanna encourage church leaders to think more about using it all throughout your church's strategy.
Did you see that obviously when COVID, the live stream and online experience shot through the roof? Obviously, yes. But did you see a sharp decline where people like, hey, you didn't, I don't know what you learned because you just went back to normal as soon as we went back into a physical location. Did you see that, or did you see folks learn from that? How important was online after COVID kind of died down?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there was a huge adoption of online and streaming, and so there was definitely a big bump in everything you were doing, but ultimately, I found that post-COVID, what you had is you did have a decline because there were people that were primarily in person. Those people came back, but then what you actually had post-COVID is you had more people actually enjoying that experience, and so generally, I saw somewhere between a 15 to 25% retention post-COVID. Because what happened was people go, "Oh, if I'm sick or if I can't make it or if I have a friend that hasn't showed up in person yet, this is a really good experience or option
Mhm.
to stay engaged." And so it's kinda like Zoom. Like, everybody says post-COVID, "Oh, I hate Zoom," but guess what? You all use Zoom post-COVID. It may not be your primary, way, but now everybody understands it. And so I
Yeah.
found like there was a study that just came out from I think Ryan Berg had this breakdown that he talked about, a lot of people that are using church online, let's if we limit it to just streaming, it's people that show up in person. They're not just supplementing, they are double dipping. Because I always say this, like, people think, "Oh, you put stuff online, it's gonna reach new people." No, the people that give, that show up in person, they want online too.
Right.
They wanna maybe rewatch the message, or maybe they wanna stay engaged if they can't come that weekend because their kids have something on Sunday. And so I think online church generally has increased post-COVID for sure, but I think the questions come down to, is there more to be done?
Right.
And I think I really like to nudge, and this is what I do in my book, is I try to nudge people to go, hey, streaming church services is a great option depending on your size and your strategy. But I think digital can be used to make disciples and actually aid in what you're doing. So like let it drip into all areas of your ministry, not just your weekend strategy.
Good. So how do visuals, let's try to cross this
Mm.
over a little bit. How do your visuals matter when it comes to your online experience? And I'm hesitant to say online worship experience because of what you just said, and that it's not just a Sunday, right? It's through the week. So it's digital discipleship through the week.
Yeah, one of the hardest things is obviously we live in this like attention, seeking type of culture where people, I watch my own kids, because of shorts, they're always sliding and moving on to the next thing. And it's just kind of, it's part of this culture. There's so much information overload, like on the internet, people got to, they're even looking at my content or they're looking at your content. And it's like, we're always trying to get more eyeballs. And so because of that, I think the people we're trying to reach and also the people that are inside our church, it's hard to keep them engaged. And I think we can whine about that and kind of, tell them to read books like the Ancient Generation and all this stuff. But ultimately, I think we have to kind of compete with who we're reaching, and we just have to understand our culture the same way as Paul understands the culture. So with that, I think visuals are one of those ways that you keep people engaged in what you're doing. And so generally, like for example, like it's really easy to just prep for a message and then just give it.
Right.
It's a whole nother level to actually do the extra work to create the visuals to aid. I still remember I attended a conference 10 years ago. It was Seth Godin.
Yeah.
And he was in Newport, California. My pastor at the time bought me tickets to go to this thing. I think I had read one of his books, but I remember he gave this message.
It was Purple Cow.
It,
That's the book.
it had to have been Purple Cow. He was the one right after that, but I digress. But I still remember one of the most powerful things about that presentation was he had a full screen behind him. He never turned around. Now I knew he had a monitor in the front,
Mhm.
but he never turned around, and he didn't have like words, but he had like he would talk about the emotion, like let's say smile, and he would have this huge photo of a smile. And one of the most powerful things about that talk was it really aided in his presentation because he was like this small little dude. He had this huge screen and he would talk about something and like without, I think he had a clicker, but he just kind of, the visuals enforced the emotion and the feeling he was trying to communicate. So I think the power of visuals is that if you have it timed and figured out, putting something behind you or up in front of you, it's powerful. But the hard part is the cheap way to do it now is just to have a keynote and just do words. The problem is that's a lame way to do it.
I think you're hitting on something in that it takes work.
It takes work.
Is it worth it? Is it worth the work?
I think so when it is aligned. At the end of the day, if you are really getting up and saying something in front of people, it takes another 10%, 5% to do it. Like I'm doing a breakout later today. This morning I was changing my presentation because I was like, I had an idea. But then I was sitting there I was on Google trying to find a PNG that I didn't have to pay for. And it's just like, I'm like, no, because I know if I can say the word taxi, or when I say the word taxi, I also have a photo of a taxi. And I think that visual, so again, we're tension seeking. There's so much going on, and visuals along with words and a visual, it's more powerful and it moves. And I think that there's no better place doing that on social, doing that on a message. I could tell a story,
Yeah.
but if I have a photo of the story while I'm telling it just reinforces it.
And I think you hit on something with finding an image on Google. I think it takes a whole nother step to one, find legal content
Yeah.
that you can show legally, and then an even larger step to either have your internal team make it or an outsourced team make it. Like all these, I totally understand. Like this takes planning
Yeah.
and work to get there, but is it worth the moment to get there? Is it going to make a difference? I think it does. I think you've seen that at Saddleback
Mm.
all the time. I would say. How often or how far out do you guys plan?
Yeah, we're normally, we do the 4 to 6 weeks of a series. And then I would say like we're probably 80% there. And then in a weekend, there's probably a 15-20% agile. Like we're making adjustments.
Right, but how far out are your sermon series planned?
We're right now we're out. We're usually a year in advance.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're thinking about topics and then
Right.
there'll be changes. But again, I when you're telling a story or you're trying to communicate something, I think if you recall anything powerful that has changed your mind, I bet it's because there was a photo or a video shown along with it. Again,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like, you ever try to do this where you're watching a YouTube video, but then you're trying to do something else and you don't look at it? For some reason, I mean, you can do that. Obviously,
Right.
audio is a
Right.
valuable
Your
medium,
brain doesn't
but your
register.
brain doesn't want your brain. I was watching something last night, kind of when I was trying to go to bed,
Yeah.
and I had YouTube up, and I was like trying to close my eyes, and my brain was like, no, just turn it off. Even though like technically the visuals, I know what they're communicating, but again, it's that idea that
I don't want to see it.
they want to see it, and and again, I think it cements it more into your synapses in your
Yeah.
brain when you have the visual and you're saying it. And I think visuals are so powerful in moving people to kind of pay attention.
So some of the stats show that it's a 10% retention rate if someone is saying something. People will remember if they're only hearing this, a 10% of it.
Yeah.
But if they're watching something, it's 80%. So it jumps up to 80% if retention and absorbing it if you see it versus just hear it.
Well, like, it's like those lame videos on, like, TikTok and Instagram where it's like you're listening to someone talk, but you're watching somebody, like, mess around with Play-Doh
Right.
on the right-hand side. And again, those are hackways that are, I think, short-sighted strategies.
Yeah.
So, but you can see people understand, like, oh, like, if I put this visual next to it, I can get people to even stay along. Now, I think it's a little hacky because it's short-sighted. It's not gonna work long term. Those are things that you can do to kinda maybe get an extra 2%, but it's not gonna it actually might lead to negative, engagement with your brand long term or your church long term.
Yeah. Good. All right. Last question for you. Give me one quick tip that a pastor can take away, a ministry leader can take away. That could be a tech tool that you use, a tip that you've learned over the years. Give me one takeaway.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like to encourage a lot of church leaders, especially if we're talking about the power of visuals, is when you're scrolling around on Instagram, YouTube, or whatever, pay attention greatly to the things that get you to stop. I think this is just one of those underutilized thought process. And so if something gets you to stop and pay attention, kind of reverse engineer what just happened and kind of go, oh,
Why did I stop?
yeah, why did I stop? Why, if you think about it, like, again, the internet is like, it's an abundance of things. And so abundance leads to a lot of noise. And so anytime a video gets me really engaged in the first 15 to 30 seconds, I try to go, wait, how can I do that in my next video? Or, again, I do this a lot when like a pastor gives a message. Like, I was listening this morning when I was getting ready, I was listening to a Chuck Swindoll message, like on my phone. And he told this story, and I'm always like, man, I wish I had Chuck Swindoll's voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I go, but like, and it's that idea of just like, next time your attention stops, try to reverse engineer. And I bet if it happens on YouTube or Instagram, there's probably a visual that went along with that. I do the same thing with ads. If an ad on Instagram or YouTube or somewhere gets me to click on it, I usually try to find out like, why did I click on it? And then I'm like, can I do that?
Good.
Can I create it? So I would just pay attention.
Good takeaway, man. Grateful for the time.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, buddy. This has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals. Executive produced by Carl Barnhill. Edited by Mario Franco. Title and show graphics by Angie Lomas. For more resources to help you visually communicate the gospel, visit churchvisuals.com.